Hi, hello everyone. Welcome. If you're watching this video, then I'm guessing you watched the first part, which I used to teach you the basics of Python, importance of Python, and how to get Python on your system. So in this class, I want to start with the very first concept of Python, which is a concept that is it's a general programming concept, which I like to call variables, right? Variables. All right, and we're going to be talking about variables. So what exactly are variables and why are they so important, right? So variables basically are just containers that we use to store data temporarily. So they're containers for storing data. Now, one of the things or concepts that I can use to help you understand variables very well is the concept of phone numbers. For example, let's say for example, a friend of yours calls you with a random number for the first time, and this is how his number is looking. Chances are you're going to save his number, especially if you want to call him again. You're going to save his number. Let's say Mike, for example, is equal to, and then you're going to have this number here. Now, the issue with this is the reason why you're trying to save his number is because you know that Mike is easier to remember than a bunch of digits that are brought together. So most of the time you're going to store the number, the complex data, in a container, right? And you're going to name that container Mike. So that's the concept actually of variables, right? But what we have here is we have an equal to sign and we have two sides. So the first side is actually the name of the variable. That's the name of your container. And then the second side is your data. So remember we said variables are just containers used to store data temporarily. So you have two sides, the variable name and of course your data. These are the two sides. Now there are rules that you must follow whenever you're using both of the sides. So just quickly, let's start with the variable name. The first thing is your variable name should be very descriptive. Now, for example, if I use Mike is equal to this, it's not really telling the whole story because this could mean anything. This could mean Mike's PIN, Mike's password, Mike's number for anything. So most of the time, your variable name should be descriptive. So you have things like phone, Mike's phone number, for example, is equal to this. So anybody who's looking at this knows exactly what these numbers are for. So this is just one of the rules. Now the second rule is that you cannot start with a number. Now I know 10 Mike's phone number doesn't really make sense, but I've seen students use it in things like 10%, for example. So it's always better that instead of using 10%, you use 10 in words underscore percent, or you can have 10 at the end. So you can't just start with numbers, but you can use numbers inside of your variables. Another important thing is that numbers, right, apart from numbers of course, is that I'm sure you've seen me use a lot of underscores lately. So I've used Mike's phone number, I use underscores. I also use underscores here. And the reason why is because spaces are not allowed. You can't have spaces when you're naming a variable. So we use underscore in Python to store variables. So if you're maybe watching, you're learning a new programming language, but you just want to understand the concept of variables, right? You might see in things like Python, in JavaScript, for example, they have a different way of writing it. So they don't use underscore. They actually use what we call camel casing, where it's together, but every word starts with a capital letter apart from the first word. So 10, then percent is like that. But in Python, we use what we call snake casing, where everything is lowercase, and then you use underscore to represent space. Of course, underscore is the only symbol that is allowed. So if I use something like the $sign, you can see it turns red. If I use the percentage sign, it turns red. So that's another rule that you should follow. Now it's also case sensitive because 10% is actually different from 10%. They're different. They're completely different. So they're completely different things. So that's why it's advisable that you follow the snake casing pattern so that you're always working with small letters, and you know that you're not going to make any mistake, because you might be wondering why is it printing out 34 instead of printing out 43, not knowing that you probably made a mistake with the T. So those are just some of the rules. Now of course we're going to be talking about other rules as time goes on. We're going to be discussing all the different rules that we haven't talked about in this video, but this video is just to explain the concept of variables to anyone. Thank you. See you on the next one.